Yeah, so I met this guy,
Yeah, so I met this guy.
and he's got some friends who are very.
Let's say interesting.
He's got some friends who are very interesting. You should totally listen to this.
Hello and welcome. My name is Harry, and I've been very fortunate in my life to meet a bunch of very interesting people. Every other week, I will share some insights from these folks on their profession, their challenges, their delights, their perspective on life, and perhaps some off-the-wall stuff that may surprise us all. From musicians to coffee roasters, from surgeons to sommeliers, from artists to execs, and many more, we'll learn a bit about what makes them tick and maybe something that helps us navigate our own day-to-day lives. Okay, now, on with the show. Mike Norlen is a very interesting fellow. Mike ran a successful law firm for many years. That, plus a wonderful family and volunteer/leadership demands at his church, kept him plenty busy. Now, Mike has retired from his law practice and has discovered a few new interests and hobbies. Mike is an aficionado of books, fine liquors, and cigars. Mike has combined those interests with his vocal skills to produce an engaging new sort of podcast called Cocktails of Crime and Fashion. I'll let him tell us more about it later on in the podcast, but right now, let's meet Mike Norlen.
How you doing, Harry? Nice to be here.
I'm doing good. Thank you for giving us a few minutes today, because this is some pretty cool stuff. But we'll get to that podcast content pretty soon. But I think it'd be more meaningful for this folks if they get to know you just a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit about your life path and what led you to today.
Well, Harry, I grew up in a little town in the Texas Panhandle and ended up going to college in northeastern Oklahoma at what's now called Oklahoma Wesleyan University. I majored in religion, and after I graduated from college, I accepted a position up in the winter hinterland of South Dakota for a couple of years as an assistant minister, and moved to Kansas City in the early 80s to attend seminary. After about a year and a half of that, I realized I'm probably not really cut out to be a minister, so I changed tracks and enrolled in the law school at the University of Kansas. So I've been a minister, I've been a lawyer, and I guess now if I can just get my foot in the door as a used car salesman, I'd probably be able to say I've been in the three most disreputable professions that exist.
The trifecta.
Yes.
Okay, well, tell us a little bit about what's the best thing about being a lawyer?
I think the best thing is you have a feeling of accomplishment if you've helped clients, whether it's defending a lawsuit or helping someone who's gotten themselves in a bit of trouble. I always felt good, after a successful representation or case.
And the worst thing, what's the worst thing that comes with that gig?
Well, the best thing, as I just said, were the clients, and the worst thing are the clients. Particularly with the rise of the internet now, everyone thinks they're a lawyer or thinks they're a doctor, and trying to have a person run their own case while you're trying to represent them is frustrating, to say the least. I've had some great experience with clients. I've had some not so great experience with clients.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, did you have any previously held beliefs that were changed by your field?
Oh, I think like most people, I grew up on television shows like Perry Mason or The Defenders, and it kind of glamorizes the law practice. But really, except for those moments of highs, it really is pretty boring. It's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of phone calls trying to find the right tack for a particular lawsuit. That, and the fact that in the media everybody's innocent. And I found early on, you rarely represent innocent clients in criminal law. They've usually done something. And my job was to try to mitigate the risks that their behavior has caused.
Okay. All right. Can you think of did something funny ever happen? Something that you could talk about?
Yeah, without giving any names. Decades ago, I found myself appointed to represent someone who was charged with, I guess you could say, showing off a body part to some people who didn't necessarily appreciate that. So he was arrested. He bailed out, and I actually went to his home to visit him. He was a younger man who lived with his parents. And I introduced myself and sat down in his living room, and he said, "Just a minute," went upstairs to his room, came back down with a yellow legal pad that was just filled with writing, front and back pages. And he handed it to me, and turned out he had copied, I believe it was the Gospel of John. He had copied it in longhand on that yellow legal pad. He shifted through the papers and came to that part of the Bible where it said, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me." And he said, "Do you know who that's talking about?" And I said, "Well, yeah, it's talking about Jesus." And he nodded his head and pointed at himself. So I had the privilege of actually representing Jesus Christ in an indecent exposure case. So we got talking about his situation, and turned out there had been a mother and a little girl that the mother banged a shopping cart into his car. So he proceeded to let her know of his displeasure by exposing himself. And I said, "Well, if would Jesus really do that with a child?" And he said, "Well, the child couldn't see me." And I said, "Well, yeah, it says here in the police report that she did." And he said, "No, she didn't. I willed that she not be able to see me." So, that's my representation of Jesus. And he ended up being a guest at a mental health facility for a period of time to see if we could get past that little episode.
So I want to know, how did that go on your resume? The next thing you filled.
Oh, well, I just
Bullet point.
I just posted a picture of Jesus as, if you want a recommendation of my services, this is who you contact. And so that was pretty interesting.
That is definitely interesting. Yeah, I can see why you might remember that. Is there one thing about your field that you would like our listeners to know or be aware of, or whatever?
Well, I would just say, whether it's criminal law or corporate law, if you find yourself in a situation and you're not really sure what the correct path is to take legally, I think it's a lot better to spend a few $100s and go to an attorney and get a legal opinion than to just go ahead and do it and then go back to the attorney after you're in trouble and spend thousands of dollars trying to dig yourself out of a hole. That old saying, I'd rather, what is that? I can't remember. You're going to have to.
Penny wise and pound foolish.
Yeah. Or just do it and apologize later. I can't remember the saying.
Okay.
But
begging forgiveness is easier than
asking
Asking
permission.
permission, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
And that's really not true.
Yes, I guess
And
so. Okay, so getting off the business field for just a second, let's talk a little bit about Mike Norlen. What's your favorite book?
uh, well, being an attorney, one of my favorite books is by Scott Turow. He's a longtime attorney, and it's Presumed Innocent. Um,
Hmm.
it's been a movie, and it recently was what I consider to be a pretty inferior Netflix series. But it was just the kind of book that, as you're reading it, you're just engrossed and you're trying to figure out what happened. And I probably came to 3 or 4 different conclusions. And then you get to the last 10 pages, and I was just blown away. Um, that to me, that's the gold standard of legal thrillers. And Scott Turow is just an amazing
You
author.
you put that really great because you didn't like blow it for anybody. There were no reveals or whatever they call that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I left my memory at home
Yeah.
today.
As you can tell, I did too.
Okay.
Um,
So is that also your favorite author, or in general, is your favorite author somebody different?
I would say Turow is my favorite author. When a book comes out and his name's on it, I usually try to snap it up. Ron Chernow is another good one in the field of historical biographies. He's written a lot of good books about historical figures, so I like him as well.
Cool. And what about music? What do you like in the ways of music?
Oh, I'm kind of an old fashioned guy. I really like the songs from they call it the American Songbook, I guess. Uh, Love Frank Sinatra, uh, uh, Sammy Davis Jr., Mel Torme, guys like that, kind of soft jazz ballads. Those are my go-tos.
Cool, cool. And so who's at the top of your musical mountain? Who's the best ever?
It's Frank, baby. It's
Okay,
Frank.
okay. No argument for me on that. Yeah, yeah. He was wonderful. Okay. What about visual art, painting, sculpture, ceramics, that kind of a thing? What do you like?
Um, Really more into landscapes and seascapes, oil paintings. Uh,
Mhm.
are what I really enjoy. We have
Cool.
we have a few pieces of original work that we purchased over the years in the house, and I like them a lot.
Nice, nice. Okay. Um, if you were a kitchen appliance, what would you be?
I would be an immersion blender.
An immersion blender. Okay, can you tell us why?
Well, I like to kind of get in there and get my hands dirty, mix things up, create a little chaos, and hopefully something good comes out of it.
Actually, that's a wonderful segue into my next question because I'm dying, so to speak, to hear about more about your podcast. So take a few minutes and tell us about Cocktails of Crime and Fashion, how it came to be, what it's all about, where they can find it, all that good stuff.
My youngest daughter, Macy, and I were talking one afternoon over a cocktail, and she was talking about some of the true crime podcasts that she had listened to. She's really into that, and as we continued to drink and continued to talk, we said, what would be a fun thing to do would be to, maybe try to do our own podcast. Take some famous cases, not cold cases that we're trying to solve. We don't have those resources, but something like maybe the Lindbergh kidnapping. What was that all about? Who really did it? Did the police get it right? So more historical crimes.
Mhm.
And she said, well, yeah, I think with your background, that would be a good thing to do. And I said, yeah. She was into fashion at that point. She had a degree in fashion, and so we could pick a case. Say in the 1920s, the Lindberghs. Okay, what were the fashions like back in the 1920s? And we both loved cocktails, so maybe we could come up with a 1920s style cocktail that we could talk about. And that's how it evolved. And we did, I think, 2 seasons of that. And then, she had a baby and she was starting her doctoral program. So we let it go, but it's still out there. I know you can find it on Spotify and other platforms where podcasts are. Just type in Cocktails of Crime and Fashion. So we had a blast doing it. And, maybe someday we'll pick it up again.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. So I can see where you're really putting someone into the style, the living of that time with the fashion and the cocktails, and yeah, that has
Yeah.
an interesting. Again, back to the trifecta idea
Right.
of
Right.
all three things.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Right.
very, very cool. Okay. So tell me, is there anything else that you could tell our listeners about? Maybe a project you're working on, or any other subjects coming up?
Well, since I've retired, one thing I've really started to do, I've tried to learn how to cook. Came from Texas and I moved to Kansas City, and I didn't like the Mexican food up here, so I've started trying to learn how to cook Mexican food, Italian food, things like that. Just experimenting with different methods and recipes. And I do like to write, so I'm kind of playing around with some ideas for maybe my own crime novel.
Oh, you're going to write a book. That's
That's
cool.
that's what I'm working on. We'll see if it happens, but
Oh, okay.
I'm enjoying it. It's kind of fun throwing ideas around, and again, like the immersion blender, just mixing things up and see what comes out.
Well, definitely keep me informed on that progress, and maybe we can have you back again to announce it. So I want to thank you for sharing today, and we look forward to talking to you soon.
Well, thanks, Harry. Good to see you.
Thanks. Bye-bye. We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Interesting People I Know. Please follow or subscribe to be in the know about future episodes of Interesting People I Know. If you know of someone that I need to get to know and interview, please drop me a line at harrynogginsmusic@gmail.com. Thanks.
Yeah, so I met this guy.
I met this guy.
Yeah, so